We live in an increasingly mobile world. Today, more than at any time in the past, we are in the position of being able to travel wherever we want, whenever we want. In 2012, the world hit a travel milestone. For the first time in history, according to the United Nations World Tourism Organization, more than 1 billion tourists travelled the globe in a single year. This figure is made even more extraordinary by the fact that just over 60 years earlier, it was only 25 million. France was the most popular country, with over 83 million tourists visiting in 1 year. Today, we think very little about getting on a plane to fly domestically to another city in our own country, or internationally to a far-flung destination. But it's important to remember that the first commercial transatlantic flights didn't start until the 1950s. And for a long time, flying was a time-consuming and expensive business that simply wasn't accessible to everyday people. Technology fueled the development of international transport, but even more significantly, it has also transformed the experience of international travel and communication beyond all recognition. In the past, for those who travelled internationally, for leisure or to live and work in another country, communicating with family and friends back home was a challenge. But today, it's now nearly as easy to stay in touch with a friend living or travelling on the other side of the world as the one standing next to you. As a result of all these technological changes, the world has become what we call a global village. People travel widely and often live in countries far from their loved ones. How about you? Do you have many friends and family living overseas?
Yes, actually. Quite a few of them around Europe, almost in every single country in Europe. The well-known countries such as Germany, Holland, Sweden, Belgium, Switzerland, England, Ireland.
I have a huge number of friends living in New York at the moment, which is why I'm visiting for work and for pleasure and for a whole range of reasons they're over here. So I thought I would pop past and spend a week in the sunshine because it is winter back home in Melbourne.
Yes, I do. Loads of family in the Philippines, North America and all over Europe.
I have a lot of family in Jersey, which is one of the Channel Islands, but apart from that, I have some friends who live in Europe, but not outside of the continent.
It is now estimated that nearly 80% of the world's population has access to a mobile phone. It is thought that in under 2 years, there will be more mobile phones than people on the planet. With smartphones that can connect to the internet and the explosion of social media sites like Twitter, Facebook and Instagram, there are more and more ways to stay in touch with your family and friends wherever they live. So many of these developments have happened so quickly, it has become increasingly difficult to remember how we communicated before. And for some people, it's almost impossible to imagine how we would manage without internet and mobile communications. How about you? How do you communicate with people overseas?
Generally by Skype.
Has this changed over time?
Yes, it has changed over time. It used to be letters and telephone calls, and now it's email and Skype.
Can you imagine a world without internet-based communication now?
No, it's my job and I need the internet to work.
How do you communicate with friends and family overseas?
Yeah, there's a whole range of different methods you can use to keep in touch with your friends and family when they're overseas. I would predominantly use things like Facebook and email and Skype. For my more media savvy friends, we may use Twitter to keep in touch. Obviously, Instagram is a great way of getting an idea of what people are up to and a snapshot of their day. So yeah, there's so many tools that have just come around in the last few years that make keeping in touch a lot easier.
Has the way that you've communicated with friends and family changed over time?
Yeah, it's definitely changed the way that we keep in touch when friends or families are overseas. I think in the past, I know that when I travelled 3 or 4 years ago, the best way to get info home is, you know, you'd send an email and then you'd send a couple of postcards. But now, you just send a Facebook message, you send a Facebook update and mum and dad know where you are. So it's a lot easier and faster.
Could you imagine a world today without any internet-based communications?
No, absolutely not. I had Wi-Fi at my apartment where I'm staying this morning, and as soon as I got up I realised if I was going to do anything today I needed to have internet. So the first thing I did was jump on the train and go and get myself hooked up with a US SIM card so that I had my internet at my fingertips, because it's scary how lost you feel when you don't have the internet right there at your fingertips. You feel you don't have your maps, you don't have your contacts, you don't have any of that things that keeps you grounded and keeps you connected with society. So yeah, a world without internet is quite foreign to me.
How do you communicate with friends and family overseas?
I usually speak with them over the internet. We use Skype a lot, which is very popular these days, and a lot of emails back and forth.
Has this changed over time?
We've definitely gotten more used to Skype. Back in the early days, Skype was pretty difficult and the connections were bad, especially in China, so we tended to use more emails in the earlier days.
Can you imagine a world without internet-based communication now?
I honestly cannot. I was saying to a friend the other day that I couldn't imagine that my grandfather, who's now 100 years old, never had internet growing up, and I just can't imagine life without a smartphone and without constant internet access.
How do you communicate with friends and family overseas?
I communicate with them on Skype and via email and through social networking as well, so Facebook and Twitter.
Has how you communicate with them changed over time?
I used to communicate sometimes through letters when I was very, very young, but yeah, predominantly now through social media, which obviously is occurred in the last few years.
Could you imagine a world today without any internet-based communications?
I think that people would be on time, because I think before, when you had only telephones in the house and you had no internet, you'd say to people, I'll meet you here at this time, and you'd just be there. Whereas now, because you can say, I'm running 5 minutes late, I'm running 10 minutes late, you've got an excuse. So I think people would be on time if we didn't have those.
Whenever surveys listing the most livable cities in the world are published, the Canadian city of Vancouver is usually right there at the top of the rankings. There's evidence that people have lived in the Vancouver area for over 10,000 years. With a plentiful supply of food in its forests and rivers, it was the perfect place for a settlement. Europeans started arriving in the area in the mid-18th century. Today, the Metro Vancouver area is home to over 2.3 million people and has over 8.5 million visitors a year. So, what do its residents and visitors think makes the city such a special place?
I think Vancouver have everything, like the city with the skyscrapers and stuff like that, and then the nature and hills and the sea. It's like everything in one.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's so accessible. You don't need to own a car to get out to nature. I've been on a few tours where it's a city bus, and you know, a short while later you're out in nature and you're out taking a hike deep into the woods. So that's what I really like about Vancouver.
It seems like when you go around the city and you travel around it, it is very much a green city. Like there's a lot of park space, there's a lot of recycling places where you can, when you're walking down the street, you can recycle your stuff as opposed to just throwing tin cans and plastic into the garbage, which most other cities do.
Well, certainly there's a kind of a friendliness to this city where people seem open to helping each other out and talking to strangers and things. And Vancouver just has an abundance of things to do kind of outside of your work life. There's so many parks and mountains and different outdoor activities and all sorts of stuff to do. So.
Vancouver's natural beauty is impossible to ignore. From snow-capped mountain peaks to lush forests and beautiful bays and beaches, the scenery is stunning. And the city offers a huge variety of activities on its doorstep all year round. You can watch Canada's national sport of ice hockey in one of the city's stadiums. Vancouverites are passionate about their home team, the Canucks. The team have yet to win the Stanley Cup, the ultimate prize in ice hockey, but their dedicated fans will never give up hope. You can do sailing or kayaking on the rivers and creeks around the city. Or test your nerve at the 140-metre-long Capilano suspension bridge that crosses 70 metres above the Capilano River in North Vancouver. Or you can just spend your days exploring Stanley Park, a short walk from the city centre. Stanley Park is one of the biggest and most dramatic urban parks in the world. The 120-year-old green space boasts a host of attractions. And the park is also famous for its First Nation art. And no visit is complete without a photo of the remarkable totem pole display at Brockton Point. In winter, residents and visitors to the city can make the short trip to easily accessible ski resorts like Grouse Mountain, which boasts some of the best downhill and cross-country skiing and snowboarding in North America. Vancouver is a diverse and cosmopolitan city. Around half of its residents are immigrants to Canada, with 25% considering Chinese as their native tongue. And with this diversity comes many benefits, not least the amazing variety of delicious cuisine on offer in the city. Vancouver is not complacent about the challenges that come with being one of the world's most desirable destinations, and Vancouver has an action plan to become the greenest city in the world by 2020. The Greenest City Plan was put together after consultations online, through social media, and face-to-face with more than 35,000 residents of the city. The plan called on all the residents of the city to rise to the challenge of transforming our community to create a better life for future generations. It sets out 10 achievable goals for the next decade. Notable goals include plans to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 33%, to help residents make the majority of trips by foot, bicycle and public transport, and to plant 150,000 new trees and ensure that no resident lives more than 5 minutes away from a green space. Gwendol Castellan works for the City of Vancouver, helping to implement the plan. He explains its benefits.
The Greenest City Action Plan is a plan that addresses many different goals related to sustainability to try and show leadership, to differentiate the city as a leader and attract top talent to the city. So people will see that Vancouver is one that is really trying to be a city that has a lower footprint and will also, by being more sustainable, it also means that the city has fewer costs. It's less expensive to run a city that uses less energy, that has a lower impact. So it's a more efficient city as well.
But the economy of Vancouver is also dependent on tourism, and tourists don't always make the most environmentally friendly of guests. Gwendol believes the city's plans could have a far-reaching effect on its visitors.
I think when it comes to sustainability and tourism, one area where I really see the opportunity for global change is the idea that once you've experienced something that's different, that really shows better practice or more conscientious stewardship of the environment, and you go back to somewhere else and it's not, that action is not being taken, you notice it more. And that's one of the values of travel, is that you learn something and you bring a little bit of that back with you. We don't want to be leaders forever. We would like that to become the new normal as we move towards those goals by 2020.
Vancouver will need the support of all its residents and its visitors to achieve its greenest city plan, and it won't be easy. But just one look at the stunning city makes you believe that preserving this place for future generations will be worth all the work.
The world of books is a changing one. More and more of us are choosing to download digital books to read on e-readers or tablets. Many bookshops are struggling to stay open, and some people believe that the future of printed books is under threat. But however much the way that we read changes, there's one thing that stays the same. Nothing beats a good story. Whether you enjoy fiction or non-fiction, sci-fi, fantasy, thrillers or crime novels, there are some universal elements that make a good story. But they're not always easy to define. So, what do you think makes a good story?
I think suspense is always something for me. I like short sentences and something that would keep me on the edge of my seat and me waiting to read the next paragraph and not being able to put it down.
For me, a good story is one that sort of transports me to another place. A little bit of romance, a little bit of mystery, I suppose, is always good for a story. Something that makes you want to keep reading and not put it down.
It needs to have a great plot, it needs to be exciting and keep you wanting to turn the page and keep reading, but also it's really important that the writing itself is good. So I like to have lots of character description and character development, and place description is also a good thing.
But even if we think that we know what makes a good read, how many of us have really considered how you capture all these elements and turn them into a novel that grips the reader from the first page to the last? What does it take to write a successful novel? The saying goes that everybody has one novel in them, but how many people believe that is true? Do you think that you could ever write a novel?
Well, that would be amazing. I would love to write a novel. I think you probably have to have a really good idea. It'd be a lot of work, but one day I'd love to try.
Absolutely not. I am not creative enough, nor am I a good enough writer.
I used to think I wanted to. I used to actually tell people I wanted to, which was a big mistake. So now they ask where my famous novel is. But I don't think I have the time, and I don't think I'm motivated enough to do it. I don't really want to anymore.
I think I could write a novel. I've written a book, but it's not a novel. I wrote a book about the work that I do in communication.
One man who knows exactly what it takes to write a successful novel is Tim Bowler, best-selling author of over 20 books for teenagers and young adults.
I'm Tim Bowler. I'm a professional writer. I write books about people aged 14 or 15 for the most part. I write novels. They vary, of course, my books. I write about lots of different things. I've been described as a writer of dark, brooding stories for teenagers. I've been described as a writer of mystical adventure stories. I've been described as the master of the psychological thriller, which was great.
Tim's first novel, Midget, was published in 1994. In 1997, he won the prestigious Carnegie Medal for his novel River Boy. And in 2010, he published the final volume in his Blade series, an 8-book urban thriller. Tim's work has been translated into many languages, from German to Korean. And while they may have diverse themes, Tim is clear about what all his stories have in common.
For me, stage one, the thing you can't do without is it's got to be a story that keeps the reader reading. I want my readers to miss sleep, miss football, miss food, miss television, miss Facebook for my stories. Even that, you know. I want the readers to just not want to stop until they get to the end.
Today, Tim lives in rural west of England and writes his novels in a small, isolated old stone building known as Tim's Bolt Hole. He has now been writing for over 50 years.
Well, I started when I was very young. I was 5 years old when I wrote my first stories. But by the time I was 19, 20, I realised that writing was not just about playtime, about having fun. It was about something much deeper, for me anyway. And I started writing my first novel just after I left university. And it took me 10 years to write the first book. I was nearly 35 when I finished it. And I wrote a lot of words to end up with a novel which is only 50,000 words long. That one was called Midget. And eventually it was published when I was 40 years old.
So how does Tim go about writing a novel? Where does it all begin? Does he start with a plan?
I'm not a great planner. You find some authors who plan in detail. They write down all the notes about chapter 1, chapter 2, etc. Then they write according to the plan. I'm not one of those. There are lots of writers like me too. For me, I find that doesn't help me. And that's because, for me, the process of writing throws up ideas constantly. I don't really know my characters until I start to write about them. I don't really know where my story wants to go until I start to write it. The first part, the getting it written part, can be quick. The second part, getting it right, can be seemingly endless. I can spend 1/10 of the time getting it written and 9/10 of the time getting it right. But that's just how it is.
Does working in the Bolt Hole help with the process of writing his novels?
Working in this strange, isolated place is quite interesting for me because I often find that it helps me when I'm stuck because it forces me in upon myself. I can't depend on anybody else. I don't have any distractions. I can't go and watch television or play the piano and pretend I've got something better to do. I've got to stay with the problem.
Tim's books continue to be popular both as physical paperbacks and hardbacks and as digital downloads. And his readers always eagerly anticipate the publication of his newest novel. So is Tim hopeful about the future of stories and the written word?
People often say that they think that the written word is under threat from modern technology, but I just don't think that's true. Technology is with us, whether it's in the form of mobile phones or e-readers or Kindles or whatever. And the way we write, the process in a way has changed. When I first started writing, I used to use an old pencil and a notebook. Now I use a laptop. I also went through a period of using a typewriter. But the essence of storytelling is the same. How you produce the written word doesn't really matter. No one buys a book because of the way it was written. They buy a book because of the end product. And that's what they come to read, the story. And I don't think the written word is under threat at all. It can compete with every other medium that's out there, I think. Stories have been with us for so long that they're always going to be with us, and how they're told won't really matter.
In the last few years, the world has experienced the most extreme weather in living memory. In Britain, in 2010, the country experienced one of the most severe winters ever, with high snowfalls and record low temperatures. The year after was the second warmest year in 353 years, and the year after that had the wettest summer in a century. Then the spring of 2013 was the coldest in 50 years. So how come the famously uninteresting British weather has suddenly become so dramatic? The Met Office, Britain's National Weather Service, held a meeting with some of the UK's leading scientists and meteorologists to try to answer this question. The Met Office has been observing the weather for over 150 years. Today, it is known as one of the most accurate forecasters in the world. But they don't just predict the weather, they also use their data to identify shifts in the world's climate by collecting and analysing data from weather stations all over the UK and all around the world. They believe that these extreme weather conditions are influenced by climate change. This change is happening at an unusually fast rate and can't be explained by the Earth's natural cycles. Scientists therefore believe climate change is almost certainly caused by human activity. This opinion is echoed by weather experts around the world. Almost all scientists analysing weather patterns believe that the Earth is warming and that human activity is responsible. So if nearly all the experts agree, surely there's a consensus on the fact that our activities are causing climate change. Well, not exactly.
I'm not skeptical of the science as much as how people interpret the science in popular media, saying that, you know, the heat wave that's coming through is because of global warming. I think people use global warming more day to day than what the science actually tells you about the incremental effect that, you know, pollution and all of those things is having on day-to-day life around the world.
I don't believe it's human caused. I do believe it exists and it's definitely happening at the moment. But I think it's a cycle that's been happening for the last few million years, and it's a natural occurrence.
I do think humans are definitely responsible for climate change. I mean, it's just something that's actually happening. I think a lot of people don't care about it. Some people do. A lot of people do care about it. I think that we're going to find ways of living, whether it's there or not. So.
I think it's because we don't totally understand it. And I think if we were educated a little bit more on it, then we wouldn't be so skeptical.
As people often point out, this is not the first time that the Earth's climate has changed. So why are humans now getting the blame? And why is this such an important issue? Dr. Adam Corner explains.
The climate has always changed, and it always will do. The Earth went in and out of several ice ages long before humans were here. But the difference with the climate change that we see at the moment is the pace that it's happening. So, all things being equal, we should be very, very gradually at an imperceptible rate heading towards the next ice age. But what's actually happening is that we're racing in the other direction. The Earth is getting warmer. So it's the pace of change and whether humans and other species and the natural environment can keep up with that pace of change. That's the question.
So when all the evidence seems to point to one conclusion, why don't some people believe that climate change is a problem? And why do some people believe that the public is being deliberately misinformed about the issue?
My name's Dr. Adam Corner. I work in the School of Psychology at Cardiff University and also for an organisation called COIN, which stands for Climate Outreach Information Network. And I'm very interested in how people understand climate change, how they think about the risks of climate change, and how to communicate it more effectively. One of the reasons that it's thought that climate change is difficult for us to get to grips with psychologically is that it's a distant threat, and it's distant in several ways. So it's distant in terms of timescales involved, it's not really happening here and now, and it's also quite intangible, so we can't really touch it or smell it or feel it most of the time. What we experience is daily weather, and that's not necessarily a good guide to the global climate.
He believes that the evidence is so overwhelming that there should be a consensus on the existence and causes of climate change.
Every science academy around the world, almost every government around the world agrees that human activity is changing the climate, and it's changing the climate through the release of greenhouse gases associated with our burning of fossil fuels, oil, gas, things like that.
But despite this strong evidence, there are some skeptics. Some people believe the evidence has been exaggerated, and some even say that global warming is a worldwide conspiracy.
Psychologists have been interested in measuring public perceptions to climate change over the last 10 to 15 years, and over that time there's been changes in public attitudes. But one of the things that's been fairly consistent is there is a small group of people, small but vocal group of people, who doubt the reality or the seriousness of climate change. So perhaps they suggest that climate change is just a ruse to tax citizens more or something like that.
Dr. Corner believes these inexpert and untrained conspiracy theorists are misinforming the public, especially through unregulated media such as the internet.
The great thing about the internet is that it does allow broader participation in debates about critical issues like climate change, but at the same time it can also amplify voices that perhaps aren't as prevalent as they seem to be when you look at blogs. The idea that climate change is a conspiracy is a view that is only held by a small minority of people, but it is a minority that's overrepresented on internet blogs.
Dr. Corner says that climate change skeptics have disproportionate access to the mainstream media too. Journalists routinely seek their opinion in order to be objective.
The media has been criticised over the years for doing something that's called presenting false balance on climate change. So there's a norm in media reporting that if there's a story, present both sides of that story. With something like climate change, because the weight of scientific evidence is so overwhelmingly on one side that it is happening and that human activity is causing climate change, presenting that view and then a sceptical view about climate change in opposition to it doesn't actually reflect the reality.
Climate change will affect every area of our lives, the way we live, the way we work, and the way our society is organised. That's why we need to make sure information on climate change is clear and engaging, and comes from a trusted and reliable source.
Young people today are lazy and entitled. They expect everything for nothing, and they're allergic to hard work. Under 25's not in employment, education or training. Just sit at home living off their parents, playing video games and not contributing anything to society. Violent teenagers are roaming the streets, intimidating communities and committing crime with no respect for authority or fear of the law. These are just some of the negative stereotypes that exist about young people today. But how can we change this misconception of young people? This is the head office of a charity called V Inspired. Everyone here works tirelessly to counter the negative representations of young people in the media today. The charity's PR manager, Janki Mehta, explains the problem.
In the UK, we've got a massive image problem for young people. They are considered to be lazy, considered to be good for nothing. Youth unemployment figures are very high in the UK. So it's very difficult for young people to really kind of talk about the good things that they have to offer. I think it's a particularly bad problem at the moment because youth unemployment in the UK is so high. Young people are struggling to get into universities because tuition fees are really high, and there's a big divide between the generations in the UK.
So what practical help can V Inspired offer young people in the UK today?
At the moment, it's quite hard to be a young person. It's quite hard to feel good about what you have to offer society when 1 in 4 young people doesn't even have a job. But volunteering can give young people a sense of something good to offer their society, something positive that they can do, and just give them that boost that they need to kind of go forward with their careers and their lives. We run a website called veinspired.com, and it's an online marketplace for young people to link up with volunteering opportunities in charities all over the country. At the moment we have 2,500 charities registered on that website, and 145,000 young people use that website to find opportunities and also to log their volunteering hours so that they have a great record of all the time and effort they've put into their volunteering work.
You only have to go to V Inspired's website or their YouTube channel to see some of the amazing work that is being done by young volunteers around the UK today. From individual carers to youth groups fighting to improve their local communities, the stories are numerous and inspiring. Everyone at V Inspired knows that there are thousands of young people in the UK who do amazing work every day. But how do they get the message out?
We work really hard to reach out to young people in lots of different ways, and that includes using the press and media. But one of the biggest ways that we reach young people is through social media. Every year we run the V Inspired National Awards, which is the country's biggest celebration of young volunteers. We have some young people who spend hours and hours every single week doing wonderful things for their communities, but they just don't get heard about. So the V Inspired National Awards are about celebrating those young people and making sure that their efforts get recognised.
A past winner of the V Inspired Awards is Eliza Ribeiro from Croydon, South London. Eliza only recently turned 20, but she is already an experienced volunteer and campaigner. Eliza won the V Inspired National Bringing Communities Together Award for the work she does with her organisation Lives Not Knives. Eliza hasn't always been an award winner and positive role model, quite the opposite. But it was her personal experience of gang culture and knife crime in her local area that led her to turn her life around and to help others do the same. For Eliza, the change started with something very simple.
So the t-shirts came about and they said Lives Not Knives on them, and they were just plain. And loads of young people in Croydon wanted them. So my mum invested in some t-shirts, and with the money we raised, we held a party and got everyone to sign a petition saying youth can have fun without violence, just to send to the local press to prove that not all young people were negative.
And soon other people were starting to take note of her work in the community, and Lives Not Knives was born.
Our main objective was to work in primary schools, talking to young people between 9 to 11 about the dangers of getting involved in knife crime and gang culture and what can happen if you do. We started working in about 6 to 10 primary schools and now work in over 65. So we now work with over 10,000 young people a year.
Of course, Eliza didn't do it all on her own. Many people have helped her.
My mum helped set up Lives Not Knives with me and has been the main kind of drive for Lives Not Knives. Then since I was 16 and working with Channel 4, that gave us a lot of media coverage and helped us train the mentors. Then we won a Princess Diana Award and then a Philip Lawrence Award and a V Inspired Award. And that's given us huge media coverage, and as their national awards, it's been really helpful. But the main support has been the local community that have volunteered their time in helping us. And then again, my mum and my grandma, who give a lot of their time to do work with Lives Not Knives.
Eliza is a brilliant role model for young people growing up in her area and beyond. She is the embodiment of what V Inspired sets out to achieve with young people around the country. And of course, she has great plans for the future.
With Lives Not Knives, I want to create kind of mini bases across the country. So I think if there's a team of young people that are committed to reducing crime across London, across England, working together, it'll be a lot easier to understand the problems of what's going wrong, and also being able to tackle it before it actually does repeat itself. For me personally, I kind of want to do a bit of travelling and a bit of research on youth crimes committed across the world and other youth organisations that are reducing crime, but also to understand a bit more for myself and kind of build a project that might be able to work across the board, that reduces youth crime and understands the mindset of kind of young criminals.
And with the support of her family, community and organisations like V Inspired, it's easy to believe that anything is possible for Eliza in the future.
Today, brands are everywhere. They're on the clothes we wear, the cars we drive, the equipment we work with, even on our food and drink. But what exactly is a brand? A brand is the way a business distinguishes its products from the products of other businesses. It could be the company's name, or its logo or trademark. As a concept, branding has dominated modern advertising. In a world where goods are mass-produced and companies compete in a crowded marketplace, a unique brand is often a corporation's most valuable asset. But how important are brands to the people that buy them? What does a brand mean to them? Have they ever paid more just because of the brand of a product?
No, I tend to think I'm quite cheap sometimes. I might buy a brand if it's in a discounted store or online or again like in a charity shop, but I rarely pay full price if something's expensive.
Yes, I have. I'd say I research into the item that I'm buying because I want a bit more quality and I want a bit more value for my money. So I usually research and then pay for the brand if I feel it's worth it.
Sure. In some cases, it's justified. If you were to buy a car, an automobile, and you were to buy something like a Porsche or a Ferrari, you know what you're getting, and you know there's a lot of research and development that goes into that. Whereas a $300 pair of leather shoes or a belt, I don't really feel like that's worth it.
Yeah, for example, my phone, which is an iPhone 4, I paid a lot more for that because I know it's such a good phone.
Branding is not a modern phenomenon. As the extraordinary story of Harris tweed, the distinctive fabric produced on the tiny islands of the Outer Hebrides, proves. The Outer Hebrides, also known as the Western Isles, are a chain of tiny islands situated off the northwestern coast of Scotland, and are home to a population of around 26,000 people. While everyone speaks English, the native tongue of many of the islanders is Gaelic. The largest of the inhabited islands are the Isle of Lewis and the Isle of Harris, the historic home of Harris Tweed. Islanders have woven cloth by hand on the islands for centuries. But in the 1840s, Lady Catherine Murray, the Countess of Dunmore, whose family owned a lot of land on the islands, decided to sell some tweed to her friends in London. The high-quality fabric was an instant success, and an industry was born. In 1909, the Harris Tweed Association was founded, and the famous Orb trademark was granted. Today, Harris Tweed is a global business, with the material being sold all over the world. But the cloth is still made using the old machinery and the techniques of the original weavers. And uniquely, it's a process and brand that is protected by its own Act of Parliament. Today, the Harris Tweed brand needs protecting.
I'm Lorna Macaulay. I'm the Chief Executive of the Haddis-Tweed Authority here in Stornoway in the Outer Hebrides. The Haddis-Tweed Authority is a statutory public authority created in 1993 by the passing of the Haddis-Tweed Act of Parliament. I'm tasked with holding in trust for the people of the Outer Hebrides the Haddis-Tweed trademark orb. The orb is a stamp on the cloth, on every metre of the cloth. Haddis-Tweed Authority inspectors are there at the final stage of the production of the cloth, and if satisfied that that cloth meets the terms of the Haddis-Tweed Act, our stampers or inspectors will apply a physical mark to that cloth to reassure the customer that they are buying genuine Haddis-Tweed cloth.
In order to receive the orb, the material must be made from pure wool and must be hand-woven by weavers working in their own home on the Outer Hebrides. It proves to the customer that the material is authentic and meets the high standards of quality associated with Harris-Tweed.
Harris-Tweed to the consumer is a mark of quality, history, heritage, provenance. Consumers tell us it is our colours and patterns, the depth of colour and pattern that means so much to them.
Today, as in the past, it's the remarkable natural environment of the islands that inspires the beautiful colours and textures of the fabric. There are just 3 mills producing cloth on the islands. The mill employees still carefully weigh out different coloured wools that, when mixed together and spun, will create the distinctive yarn that is supplied to the weavers in their homes. Then, it is with the experience, skill and artistry of the weavers working on looms powered by just a foot pedal that the cloth is created. The cloth is then checked and finished back in the mill before it receives its orb stamp from the Harris-Tweed Authority.
The Harris-Tweed orb has traditionally always been inside as a quiet, discreet mark. This is the first time in our trading history of 150 years where the orb is now being used, like other trademarks, as a decoration on the external of the cloth.
Today, Harris-Tweed is truly an international brand. They produce over 1 million metres of cloth a year, and while originally the cloth was used for men's jackets, today it is used in an enormous variety of products, from computer tablet covers and phone cases to shoes and even dog leads. All of these products carrying the Harris-Tweed branding. Harris-Tweed is an unlikely success story. It's an industry located on isolated islands that still uses techniques and machinery that have been out of date for over a century. But this is also the brand's greatest advantage. In a world of mass-produced fabric, Harris-Tweed still stands for authenticity and craftsmanship, and is a guarantee of the highest quality and most beautiful cloth.
Where might you first meet the love of your life? At school? At work? On holiday? Or just while you're waiting for a train one day? Ask any couple and they will be able to tell you the story of how they met and decided to spend the rest of their lives together. Often the stories are simple, but sometimes they are extraordinary.
Okay, so we met in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt when was it? October last year. We are both from the same place, here, Birmingham in England, but we never knew each other before, and we've been back since to Sharm el-Sheikh.
My son started playing with your son on holiday, and it sort of developed from there, really.
We met at a wedding in France, a mutual friend's wedding.
In Cannes, to be precise. It was a lovely wedding, yeah. She was a bridesmaid and I was one of the guests, and we hit it off.
So how did you end up together?
We hit it off at the wedding.
We were put at the same table.
At the same we put at the same table. We got on very well. It was a 3-day wedding, so we got to know each other very well over those 3 days. She's from Boston in the States, so she went back there. I went back to London, where I'm from here, and we sort of had an online relationship, didn't we? And then Skype for a couple of months, and then she came to London to do her MBA. And we spent about a year together in London, and now...
Year and a half.
And now we're in Boston living together.
We met in a bar in London, and I was on a night out after work on a Friday night with a friend of mine, and we got talking.
Right, yeah. I was actually, at the time I was doing an internship in Italy, but I went on a city break in London for about 10 days, so I went with a couple of my girlfriends, and we were just hanging out, and we saw each other, I think, pretty early on, but then he eventually, maybe like an hour later or so, came up to talk, and things kind of went from there.
But in an increasingly busy world, you sometimes struggle to meet new people. And occasionally, it takes something a little out of the ordinary to bring two people together. This is Olivia and James. They've recently got engaged and they're planning their wedding, which will take place in Scotland next year. Olivia and James's love story had quite an unconventional beginning.
I put myself forward for a blind date in a magazine, in a national newspaper, and 9 months later I got an email saying, "We found somebody, would you like to go out for dinner and meet this mystery person?" So that's how I met James, was turning up to a restaurant and seeing him for the first time.
I also wrote into the magazine, and 2 days later they contacted me and said, "Actually, I know we said we wouldn't find anyone, but we have found someone. Would you be interested in going on a blind date?" To which I obviously said yes. And about a month later, we met at the restaurant. I was told Olivia's name, and I was told what she did, how old she was, and a few interests, and that was it.
Yeah, it was the same, and they told me that James was interested in architecture, writing, and theatre, I think. Oh, yeah. Sailing. Yeah, 3 things. So.
Yeah, and I remember you were interested in the arts, I think, and also architecture. I think that's where they connected us.
The very first time James and Olivia met was at a restaurant booked by the Guardian newspaper. Today, what do they remember about that dinner?
Well, that evening was very memorable. We talked about all kinds of different things. We talked about sailing and how we'd done the same run a few weeks earlier before we'd met.
There were lots of things, but the most remarkable thing was just how long we talked. It was sort of non-stop for about 4 hours until the restaurant closed.
Even before they had written the feedback for the newspaper article, Olivia and James knew that they wanted to see each other again.
After the date, I got a text from James the next day, which is perfect timing. And it was a really lovely text saying what a lovely evening you'd had, and it was very nice to meet me. So I immediately replied and said, "Brilliant, let's meet up next week." And so we arranged a time to meet up.
And did they discuss what they were writing about each other for the newspaper article?
No, we didn't know what each other had written about the other one, so that was quite exciting. And by that point, we had gone out for dinner a couple of times, and so we knew each other, but we had made a point of not telling the other one what we'd written.
So Olivia and James became a couple. And 2 years on, what is it that makes their relationship work?
Oh, that's a good question. I think what makes our relationship work is, well, we've both got a good sense of humour, And I think James is hilarious. So I'm laughing a lot all the time.
That is very important, humour, I think.
Yeah.
Not just general laughing, but being able to diffuse moments with humour is very important. And if you don't share a sense of humour, it's hard to do that.
But I think also our interests are ever so slightly different. So things that James says, you know, are his interests, I used to claim were my interests and then realised I never found the time for them, things like going to the theatre. And so when I met James, those were the things that we did together, and it was brilliant because I was suddenly finding the time to do the things I claimed I liked doing, but never quite managed to squeeze in.
And the relationship works so well that they've decided to spend the rest of their lives together.
We had known each other for just over 2 years when I proposed. Yeah. About 2 years and 2 months, I think. I had planned to propose at Christmas time because I knew Olivia would be with her family then, and I thought that would be a good time. And also her family live in Scotland, in a very pretty part of Scotland, and I thought it was quite near the sea. I thought I could propose on the beach. I thought that sounded like a good plan. But then I decided, no, it's now. I'm going to propose now, or at least the coming weekend. We were going to the theatre to see a play, and it's the National Theatre, which is quite a cool building. And I thought I could propose somewhere in the theatre. So we then arrived at the theatre. Olivia said, "Oh, I'm really looking forward to lunch. I'm very hungry."
I had been promised lunch before the play, and then there was this change of plan. I got really grumpy.
I said, "Why don't we just go on a tour?"
Because we don't have time.
It'll be brilliant. It'll be a great, they're really good. It'll be really short. You said, "No, it won't." I went, come on, it'll be brilliant. And so Olivia stood there with her arms crossed whilst I waited for the lady to arrive to take us.
Yeah.
She took us straight to the biggest stage at the National. There are 3 stages, and the biggest is the Olivier stage. We needed something to prompt us, and so she said, "Well, you have the audience of the Olivier here. Is there anything you'd like to say to the audience?" And Olivia laughed, and I said, "Well, actually, Olivia, come and sit with me on the chair." On the 2 chairs. And she said, "Oh no, what are you going to do now?" And I said, "I've actually been planning this all week." And she said, "Planning what?" And at that point I sort of slid off my chair and onto my knee and asked her to marry me. She sort of gasped and said, "Yes," and grabbed me. And a big hug.
And the news of their engagement didn't just thrill family and friends.
The girl who set us up, she was lovely. And she was lovely, you know, as things worked out. We stayed in touch with her and, you know, we told her quite quickly when we got engaged because she'd been doing that job for quite a number of years and we were the first couple she'd set up to get married. So
apparently when I sent the email or text or whatever it was, she stood up in the middle of their open plan office and put her hands above her head and said, We've got a blind date wedding! Yeah, it meant a lot to her, I think.
Yeah.
We live on an amazing planet. Earth is about 4.5 billion years old, and despite appearances, it's not a perfect sphere. Gravity's pressure, which causes water to bulge around its middle, gives Earth a circumference of just over 40,000 kilometers. Our planet has 7 continents, and over 70% of its surface is covered by the water which is contained in 5 oceans, 140 seas, thousands of rivers and lakes, and vast areas of ice. Humans have explored less than 10% of the world's oceans. Mountains scar the Earth. The Andes is the largest and longest mountain range above water. much higher and longer mountains lie under the oceans, unexplored. Humans live in just 1% of the Earth's available land. An astonishing 40% of the land is still a wilderness of natural environments and forests which humans haven't cultivated. And many of us know surprisingly little about this remarkable world which we live in. And we struggle with the simplest of geographic questions. How about you? How good is your geography?
Not so good. Pretty good. My dad is a geography teacher.
I would say average at best. It's probably not as good as it should be for my age, but I'm slowly learning the capitals of Europe.
So, can you answer 3 simple questions? Starting with an easy one, what's the longest river in the world?
Mississippi, Zambezi, or the Nile, or the Amazon, maybe. Is it one of those?
The Mississippi? The Nile? The Nile?
Maybe the Amazon, but otherwise it might be somewhere in the States. I'm not sure, to be honest.
The Nile.
Although this is a contested title, most people agree that the Nile, and not its nearest competitor the Amazon, is the longest river in the world. The river, which passes through 11 African countries, is approximately 6,650 kilometers long, and it is essential to the lives of tens of millions of people who live near it. Next question. What's the highest waterfall in the world?
Niagara Falls.
Angel Falls? Victoria Falls?
At the Angel Falls in South America.
I think maybe Angel Falls. That's in the back of my mind somewhere. Might be right.
The highest waterfall in the world is Angel Falls in Venezuela. These isolated falls drop 979 meters over the edge of the Ollantaytambo Mountains in the Canaima National Park. These falls may have less water flow than the more famous Iguazu, Niagara, or Victoria Falls, but have the highest uninterrupted drop. Final question. What's the biggest desert in the world?
The Sahara Desert. Let's say the Sahara.
So I want to say Sahara, but I know there's a trick question there. Because I know it's not, and it's somewhere else. Maybe in Australia or something. I don't know. I'm going to say Sahara, even though I know it's wrong.
Well, it could be one of the poles, because a desert doesn't have to be hot, does it? A desert can be cold. So it could be the South Pole, perhaps.
First thing that comes to mind is probably the Sahara.
It's a trick question, of course. Antarctica is the biggest desert because it experiences so little rain. The technical definition of a desert. At 14 million square kilometers, Antarctica is nearly 1.5 times the size of the Sahara Desert, which is still the biggest hot desert on Earth. Earth is a planet of extreme ecosystems, from abundant and diverse to barren and inhospitable, but they are all equally important to the balance of the planet. The single largest living organism on the planet can actually be seen from space. Located in the Coral Sea off the coast of Queensland in northeast Australia, the Great Barrier Reef is one of UNESCO's 7 natural wonders of the world. The reef is composed of almost 3,000 individual reefs and 900 islands, and stretches for over 2,600 kilometers. Around 1,500 different types of fish live in the Great Barrier Reef, about 10% of the world's total fish species. It's also home to over 400 types of coral. All this natural beauty makes it an extremely popular place for tourists, and over 1 million people visit the reef every year. Many snorkel or dive to truly appreciate the stunning world beneath the waves. The high number of people who visit the reef every year poses a risk to its delicate ecosystem. But the biggest threat to the reef comes from climate change. More than half of the coral on the reef has been lost since 1985. And this is having a disastrous effect on this most spectacular of natural wonders. At the other extreme is the Atacama Desert, located in northern Chile. The Atacama is the driest desert in the world. Most of the time, there isn't any rain here. In fact, there are parts of the Atacama Desert which have never had any rain. The weather is so arid here that even the mountains that rise to over 6,500 meters have no glaciers. The desert covers over 100,000 square kilometers, and it is mostly comprised of salt basins and sand. But despite the lack of rainfall, there are still a few lagoons in the Atacama. There's even a river, the San Pedro, which flows through the desert. There's also a remarkable geyser field at El Tatio. And the area is rich in minerals. It contains the world's largest supply of sodium nitrate, and there are many mines extracting copper from under the desert. It was in a copper mine in the Atacama Desert that 33 miners became trapped in 2010. The miners, who were eventually rescued after spending 52 days underground, made news headlines around the world. But the soil here is sterile, making it almost impossible to cultivate for farming. Soil samples that have been taken from the Atacama show many similarities with soil collected from the planet Mars. The area is so barren that it is used by scientists to test instruments for future missions to Mars. And it is home to ALMA, the largest and most expensive telescope project in the world. So it is from this extraordinary desert environment that we learn not only more about our own planet, but about our solar system too.
It's a beautiful spring morning in the quiet countryside of County Durham, in the northeast of England. On a hill overlooking the gorgeous countryside sits Pockerley Old Hall. The new hall was built in the late 1700s, and it's now a bustling hub of a home. In the kitchen, the maid is making bread for the family. She doesn't need to follow a recipe. It's a job she has done every day since she came to work at the house as a teenager. Down at Home Farm, the farmer is preparing a field for the crop of Swedes that will be planted soon. It's now Victorian times, but farming is still back-breaking work. In a time before tractors, the farmer relies on his workhorses and his own skill and experience to get the job done. Of course, none of this is real, but this is how life used to be in the northeast of England in the past. This is Beamish, the living museum of the North. Visitors come here to see how people used to live, eat, travel and work in the period from the 1820s to the early 1900s. Situated close to the city of Newcastle, Beamish is one of the most popular museums in the UK, with close to 500,000 visitors every year. And the museum's success is not exceptional. In modern times, there seems to be something of a resurgence in interest in how we used to live. Living history museums and carefully preserved ancestral homes are increasingly popular destinations for people to visit. So why do we seem more interested in seeing how people used to live than how they live now? Why are we so interested in the past?
It's our heritage, it's where we come from. I live in a really old city, I live in Edinburgh in Scotland, and the history's everywhere. You walk down every street and it's full of old buildings, and you imagine who might have lived there, 100 years ago, who stood where you were standing now.
I think some people probably might not have been interested in finding out about their past and their heritage, but then they might be drawn to it because they fall in love with a book or a movie or a TV show that they're really interested in, and that sort of triggers some interest.
Nearly everyone agrees that we have a lot to learn from the past. But do they agree that in the modern age, it is still important to keep the old skills alive?
Definitely. I believe so. I think we need a little bit of the past to mingle a little bit with our present. Too much of, I think if we got rid of it, then we would just lose who we are.
I think old skills in terms of cooking and baking will always be important in day-to-day life, but plowing with horses and knitting may not be as important. I think it's a great skill to have, but given modernization of technology and mass production of things, I think many of those skills are probably going to go by the wayside into the future.
At the Beamish Museum, the staff work to provide their visitors with the most authentic historical experience possible. The museum opened in 1972, but work started on the collection long before that. In the late 1950s, the old customs and traditions of the Northeast were starting to die out as industry in the region declined. The communities that used to serve the collieries, shipyards and farms were disappearing, and with them the old way of life was being lost. A project started to collect things from the past. Anything and everything that used to be part of everyday life. The people of the region gave generously. Thousands and thousands of objects from kitchenware to steam engines. And these all became part of the recreation of the vanished communities at Beamish. Today, at the centre of the 300-acre site is the recreation of a town from the turn of the century. The town is complete with homes, shops where you can buy handmade sweets, and even a local dentist. Visitors travel around the site on beautifully restored trams. They can visit Pockley Old Hall to see how life was lived by the local landowner, his family and staff. And they can visit a colliery village from 1913 and see the cramped workers' terraces where women used to bake bread in communal ovens behind their houses. They can also see the local school where the boys and girls were educated separately, and the tiny pit ponies who used to work down the mines. Visitors can even get an authentic taste of the past from this takeaway where the cooking is still done with coal fires, just like it used to be. And the fish and chips are just as popular and delicious as they have always been. And more than just a museum, Beamish has become an invaluable educational resource. as well as offering its visitors a glimpse into how life used to be lived. It helps to preserve and pass on old skills through a range of short courses. The old ways are all brought to life by the costumed demonstrators who work at the museum. It's their job to interact with the visitors, to provide insight and explanations of the world around them. Visitors range from primary school children to the elderly, and their reactions to the experience can be very different. Sonia works as a maid at Pockley Old Hall. So what do the older visitors find interesting when they come to see her in the kitchen?
Really, they're interested in the things that they can remember from their childhood or from their grandmother's house. So it's, oh, I used to have one of those, or I can remember when we used to use this. You know, a lot of things, although we're set in the 1820s, a lot of things carried on until early last century. So things, you know, if things weren't broke, you didn't replace them. So things went from generation to generation to generation.
And how is this different from her younger visitors?
The children, when they come, they're absolutely amazed by the fire. A lot of them have never seen a real fire before. Some of them are actually quite reticent. They don't really want to go too near it because obviously they've been told, stay away from fire.
Sonia learned her baking skills the traditional way. And after working at Beamish for many years, she is used to her life as an 1820s maid. And there are few things in the modern world that she couldn't live without.
Well, the skills that I'm using today are skills that have been passed on from mother to daughter through generations. So I'm just doing what my mother used to do and what my grandmother used to do. I think I could pretty much live without everything that we take for granted today. But the one thing I think I couldn't really live without is international travel. The ability to move from one country to another with such ease, I think, is very underrated.
The author L.P. Hartley once wrote that the past is a foreign country. They do things differently there. At the Beamish Museum, they make visiting this foreign country as enjoyable as possible. But they also help to keep it easily accessible to every generation.
This is the beautiful city of Copenhagen in Denmark. The city, situated on the eastern coast of the island of Zealand, is Denmark's biggest city and has been its capital since the beginning of the 15th century. Today, the city is home to over 1 million people, and it's a bustling and cosmopolitan city with stunning palaces and parks, great shops and world-class restaurants. But Copenhagen's origin is as a small fishing village, established back in the 10th century by the most famous and feared of Denmark's old inhabitants, the Vikings. The legacy of a great Viking empire that dates back more than 1,000 years can be seen across Europe to this day. But now it's very hard to separate fact from fiction when talking about the Vikings. So many myths, sagas and legends have grown up around the medieval civilization of raiders, traders and intrepid explorers that it's difficult to know which of the stories are actually true. Over 1,000 years after the end of the Viking era, new technology, working in tandem with old skills, is helping us to learn more about this great civilization. And some of the most important work is happening not far from Copenhagen in the historic town of Roskilde. The town of Roskilde is around 30 kilometers west of Copenhagen, sitting at the head of the Roskilde Fjord. In Viking times, the town was the capital of Denmark and a vital trading centre. There had always been rumours that Viking ships might have been deliberately sunk in the Roskilde Fjord in order to protect the capital from attack from the sea. For years, fishermen and divers had been finding parts that could have come from Viking ships in shallow water at Skulderlev, 20 kilometres from Roskilde. But it wasn't until 1962 that work began to excavate this area of the fjord, and 5 ships emerged from the mud. The ships had probably been at the bottom of the fjord since the 11th century. They were in thousands of pieces, and this left the archaeologists with a massive, intricate jigsaw puzzle that would take them many years to solve. Every piece of timber needed to be carefully recorded and preserved, so that the ships could be rebuilt in the museum that had been specially constructed at Roskilde. Today, visitors can see the result of this painstaking work in the museum hall that is now home to the ships known as Skulderlev 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6. The ships range in size and purpose. Skulderlev 1 was a cargo ship built in Norway and used on trading expeditions. Skulderlev 6 was a much smaller vessel, probably used for fishing. And Skulderlev 2 was perhaps the most impressive of all, a 30-metre ocean-going longship which would have been manned by a crew of 65 to 70 warriors. All these skeletal reconstructions were just the first step in a process that was to reveal an enormous amount about the Vikings. The Viking Ship Museum at Roskilde is more than just a museum. It's also home to a research institution and a working boatyard where they use experimental archaeology to uncover the secrets of the Viking shipbuilders' prowess. The team of archaeologists and shipbuilders at Roskilde take all the information from the remains found at the bottom of the fjord and use it to create exact 1:10 scale models of the ships. These models then provide the template for full-scale reconstructions that are built in the shipyard. Importantly, the entire process of building the replica ships is done using reproductions of tools that would have been used by the Vikings. Careful analysis of the marks on the timber and the accumulated knowledge from previous finds of Viking-age tools from places as far away as Canada help the shipbuilders to understand which tools must have been used. Finally, the completed replica ships are sailed and tested at sea in all weather conditions. And it is through this process of testing the ships in the water that some of the most valuable information is obtained.
We get a lot of answers on questions we ask when we build it. Things we cannot find out why did they do it like this, and still we do it exactly like they did it, and even though we can't find the answer, but we will find it when we go out sailing with the boat, because it's where it should be, it's where it's built for. And if it's not functioning on the sea, on the big waves, and when you get seasick and all this, then it's maybe because we have reconstructed the ship in the wrong way.
Søren Nielsen is head of the boatyard at Roskilde. He was in charge of the Sea Stallion construction project. The Sea Stallion from Glendalough is the replica ship built from the skeleton of the Skulderlev 2 longboat. Analysis of its timber had revealed that the ship must have been built in Ireland, probably in the vicinity of Dublin, around the year 1042. Reconstructing the ship took over 3 years. But when it was completed, Søren was on the crew when they sailed the ship from Roskilde back to its original home, Dublin. It was an exhilarating and illuminating trip.
So sailing the ships, it makes you think about the Viking Age. It makes you think about the organization of 60 people on board a ship like this, how to organize these people and how to sail it, how to handle the ship without breaking it. So it gives you a lot of answers on questions, but of course then it gives you a lot of new questions on a lot of things. How did they sail around north of Scotland in the Viking Age with 60 hungry people, warriors? And how did they go to Isle of Man, for example, with 60 ships, not only one ship? We have difficulty today where we have our cell phones and everything. We have a lot of difficulties to actually organize this trip. But think about the Viking Age where they came hundreds of ships. How did they organize that? Going into the coast at exactly the same time, be ready to fight, have water enough to be ship shape, and it's some of these questions you just have to ask yourself when you're sailing there.
While the structure of the ship was authentic, the Sea Stallion had added modern GPS to ensure the safety of the 65-strong modern-day crew. The journey took more than 6 weeks, and when they finally arrived in Dublin, emotions were running high.
I would say we were crying mostly, because when we went in, there was, 10,000 people, a lot of people. And Dublin, they think this, now we're coming back with the ship. It belongs to them. And the Sea Stallion, it was just in every Dubliner's heart, I think. They were there. And when we went into the big harbor, the big ships, they started, and people were just, it was a big moment. It was. Not because, we haven't crossed the North Atlantic or something like that, but it was just, we felt very, very welcome when we went to Dublin.
In the past few years, another 9 ships have been unearthed at Roskilde, and work is ongoing to preserve and reconstruct these ships. And through this work, we will find out even more about the fascinating Viking civilization and the incredibly skillful shipbuilders that made it all possible.
Most people know there are 5 main senses: sight, hearing, taste, smell, and touch. All of these senses influence how we experience the world. But what's the most important sense?
I'll definitely say probably sight, I think. Without that, I don't think you would be able to get an impression of what's going on around you. Obviously, the other ones work just as well, but it's just seeing everything in colour and in 3D can really kind of give an impression of what things are without using the other senses.
I think that smell is the most important sense opposed to all the others because it brings out the memories in people more than I feel other senses would. So if you were to smell a food that you were to smell when you were a kid, it would bring out an immediate sense of satisfaction or happiness that some others couldn't.
Of course, all senses are important, but what would it be like if you could hear colour? For some people, this isn't a hypothetical situation. People with synesthesia experience this crossover of the senses all the time. Synesthesia is a relatively common but harmless neurological condition where people make connections between their senses. Some synesthetes, the name given to people with synesthesia, associate letters or numbers with a specific colour. So the letter A might be red, or the number 1 might be blue. Others associate colours or shapes with sounds. And some even make connections with their sense of taste. Scientists have been aware of the existence of synesthesia for over 200 years. But for a long time, they knew very little about the condition. But today, they can use neuroimaging to see how our senses stimulate our brain. The sensory cortex is the part of the brain that deals with the senses. Different areas of the sensory cortex are stimulated by different senses. Scientists believe that synesthesia is caused by an unusual amount of connections between these areas. In the past, synesthesia was thought to be extremely rare. But today, scientists believe between 1 and 4% of the population have the condition. In fact, even people that don't have synesthesia often make connections between their senses. These strange connections between senses all come under the term multisensory perception, and this is currently an intriguing area of scientific research. Professor Charles Spence is the head of the Cross-Modal Research Laboratory at Oxford University. He studies how multisensory perception affects the way we interact with the world and how this can be exploited.
I'm an experimental psychologist working here at Oxford University, and I'm interested in the senses, in hearing and vision and touch, taste, pain, and how those senses get put together in people's heads. And in this building with a lot of neuroscience going on, which means we try and understand the rules that connect your eye to your ear to your nose to your mouth.
Professor Spence calls this multisensory stimulation or multisensory perception.
So multisensory stimulation or multisensory perception refers to the idea that we have 5 senses or perhaps more: hearing, vision, touch, taste and smell. And most of the time when we experience the world or products around us, they stimulate most, if not all, of the senses. So I think most people, when they're studying how the senses interact, tend to focus on hearing and vision. So why it is you hear the voice coming from the lips on the screen in the cinema, that would be called the ventriloquist's dummy illusion. And separately, there are people working in food science, thinking about how smells and tastes and the pain of a chili burn come together to give rise to flavours in the mouth. But those two things rarely come together, and that's a lot of the work that we do. And so that sort of link between, say, tastes and flavours and sound is the last one that anyone thinks about.
He believes we use multisensory perception all the time when we're eating a meal or choosing a particular product in the supermarket. It's an important part of our everyday lives.
So take a lovely meal, and it's got to taste right, it should have the right aroma or smell, it needs to look visually appealing, the crunch, the sound should be right, as should the texture, the mouthfeel or the fattiness in the mouth. So all the senses are involved in the perception of food. And that maybe is the most multisensory of our experiences. But elsewhere, if I think about some sort of packaging or something, say this bottle here, it's got a certain weight, so that's got a tactile perception. It's got a feel of roughness, so that's kind of, it's also got a sound I can hear, a colour, and it'll have a smell. So all the senses are again being involved in my perception of this product and its packaging. And a lot of the work that we do with companies now is trying to help them enhance the multi-sensory appeal of what they're offering.
Professor Spence's team are working hard to improve our understanding of multisensory perception. A lot of this research is very useful for food businesses. Today, they are testing how different music can affect the taste of coffee.
We're looking at sort of synesthesia, which is this mixing of the senses. People who see coloured numbers or days of the week are the ones you see on television. But we think that maybe we're all synesthetes, kind of. So that when we give people in the lab downstairs different tastes, flavours, aromas, and we give them a choice of any instrument, any pitch of sound, just pick an instrument and a high note or a low note that goes with that taste. Say it's taste of coffee or the smell of chocolate or of raspberries. It sounds like a bizarre thing to do, and yet we've been doing it for years, and most of our subjects give reliable answers that are very similar to one another. So most people will say that sweet is high-pitched and probably a piano, whereas bitter tastes are kind of low-pitched and they're more brassy in nature. And when you find subject after subject who says the same thing, then you can use those insights to try and create soundtracks that synesthetically match the tastes of food.
We perceive the world through our senses. Everything we experience through our sense of touch, taste, smell, sight or hearing. Therefore, a better understanding of how the senses work and how they work together will lead to a better understanding of the world we live in.
Have you ever borrowed a zip car? Used a bike sharing scheme? Or rented a room from Airbnb? If you have, then you are part of the sharing economy. In this sharing economy, people don't need to own the products they use. Technology allows consumers to share access to things instead. These new consumer habits have been termed collaborative consumption. Collaborative consumption is one of the big new economic ideas of the information age. The sharing economy is now estimated to be worth over £300 billion. And companies that offer products which can be shared are some of the fastest growing businesses in the world. Zipcar is an international car-sharing company. It gives customers access to a wide range of vehicles, which they can hire by the hour or by the day. Customers can book online or via a smartphone app. Unlike traditional rental companies, Zipcar offers access to the vehicle immediately. Airbnb is a website that allows people with accommodation to host people looking for a place to stay. The company was established in 2008. By 2012, the company had over 250,000 listings in more than 30,000 cities in the world. Even governments participate in the sharing economy. All over the world, cities are starting bike-sharing schemes. These schemes provide cheap and easy access to bikes for short city journeys. There are now around 535 bike-sharing programs across the globe. The success of these businesses and initiatives highlights a wider change in social attitudes. Most people have engaged in collaborative consumption in one way or another. As the sharing economy grows, people aren't just sharing via the virtual world, they are coming together and pooling resources in the real world too. This is the Hub Islington. It's a workspace for social entrepreneurs. People who want to make the world a better place come here to work. They all share the same workspace, and while each business is different, they spend plenty of time chatting and exchanging ideas. The Hub concept has spread around the whole world, and now there are over 30 hubs across 5 continents with over 5,000 members. The Hub is a global network built on the idea that people work more efficiently when they collaborate. Anna Levy has been working for the Hub for 2.5 years. Over that time, she has worked with many different business people on a variety of social projects.
The Hub is a network, it's a global network of social entrepreneurs, freelancers, people that are starting their own business and working on projects that have some kind of social good, social or environmental impact. And we have a space here. Hub Islington is a co-working space, and we provide the spaces and the network and the opportunities to be inspired with events to help people launch their projects.
Anna is a Hub host. which means she provides support to each and every person that comes to the hub.
There's all sorts, people from very, very diverse backgrounds, different kinds of skills and experience and sectors, so from media, we have web design, consultants of various sorts and campaigners, people from lots of different backgrounds. But the thing that pulls people together and the reason the hub is different from other co-working spaces is that we're very much focused on organisations that have some kind of a social or environmental impact. So people want to change the world for the better, one way or another, that come here.
The hub provides a great alternative to working from home. It offers freelancers a lively social environment, as well as access to office equipment, which is often too expensive to buy.
It's a million times better than working from home. For a start, it's a lot more sociable. So a lot of people that come to the hub have been working at home for maybe 1 or 2 years, and they're going crazy with loneliness, and they have nobody to share ideas with. And so just from the perspective, from the social perspective, it's a lot better. You also have access to resources that you wouldn't have at home, so like a printer and things like that, and scanner and a mailbox, and the sort of thing that you need when you start a business, and the sort of thing that you're used to having in a traditional office.
People come to the hub because they want to work, but it also allows them to share. They share resources, equipment, and information with one another. Places like the hub are right at the heart of the sharing economy.
The sharing economy, the way I see it anyway, it's about kind of collaborative consumption. So using resources, the resources that we have, rather than trying to create more unnecessary resource. So for example, things like there's a website called FreeCycle where people share things that they don't want anymore, and they kind of, and other people can bid for them and can take home, you know, someone else's TV or something like that, or lift share, things like that, so that people sharing cars to work or on their travels. So it's really about sharing our dwindling resources in the world, but there are so many other added benefits as well as just the fact that, you know, you get something for free or cheaper, or you know, you're not creating unnecessary waste.
The hub places a great deal of importance on cooperation and sustainability, ideals which sum up the sharing economy. In a lot of ways, the hub is proof that we can collaborate not only in the way we consume, but in the way we work and produce too.